Now, you probably clicked on this video thinking that I was joking around in the title, maybe even in the thumbnail, but I assure you I'm not. We've done this twice in 15 years. Mortal Kombat already needs another reboot. I'm not joking. Let me explain something to you. When it comes to the big three of fighting games, we're talking Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. Each one of them has a thing that they're known for, right? Street Fighter has the most iconic moves, the Hadouken, the Shoryuken, the Tatsu, the Sonic Boom, you know? Tekken has the most appealing gameplay because it has the highest skill ceiling. It's easily the hardest to master, but that makes it satisfying, that makes it the most fun to play. Mortal Kombat, according to many, has the best story. Now, I never really bought into that. I always thought that Tekken had the best story. I think that Mortal Kombat has the most intricate story. You know, it takes a long time to explain the lore of Mortal Kombat, where you could explain the lore of Street Fighter and Tekken a lot faster. Now, that being said, I did a video back in, I want to say, May or June, that was like 30 plus minutes long about Mortal Kombat and how it had kind of gone astray and needed to course correct. But everything that I said in that video was based on like what I knew about the game before I had actually played it. I have now played the campaign of Mortal Kombat 1, and I have even more to say. First thing I want to say about specifically Mortal Kombat 1's story. From a gameplay sense, it's structured so poorly. It's like, yeah, okay, you're gonna play as Johnny Cage, but it's before he has any powers, so you can't really like shadow kick or anything like that. You can't throw your energy balls. It's a reboot. Nobody wanted a reboot, you know? You can play as Kenshi while he still has eyes, so he doesn't have Sento yet. So like the stuff that you're used to Kenshi doing, the muscle memory that you might have from playing Kenshi in Mortal Kombat 9 and 10, useless. Oh, you can play as Kung Lao at the very beginning of the game before he gets his Razor hat, so you can't even do anything. He can't teleport or any of the moves that you're used to doing with Kung Lao. They're not available. Another thing, talking about Johnny Cage's portion of the story, his first two fights are on like discount versions of Havoc and Natara because they're on a film set. So you, out of your 4 fights, and Raiden is the only character that gets more than 4 fights, but out of your 4 fights, 2 of them don't even matter because they're not real. You only get to play as these characters for a limited amount of time. It's been like that since MK9. And we're wasting time. Anyway, I want to kind of highlight story-wise and lore-wise where we are in Mortal Kombat in such a way that it makes it difficult, nigh impossible, to even predict what Mortal Kombat 2 or 13 or whatever they're going to call it could even be. Because it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. Mortal Kombat is kind of stuck in this loop, this time loop, as it were, where the story gets too big and there is no path forward. We first observed this in Mortal Kombat Armageddon. It's every single character pretty much fighting each other to the death so that they can make a run at Blaze, because whoever can take down Blaze basically becomes a god. Like, beyond a god, truly. They can, like, remake the universe. But obviously, no matter who wins that, that's the end. I mean, the game's called Armageddon, the end of all things. So obviously, there is no path forward. The next game was a crossover that, even if it were canon, takes place, like, after Mortal Kombat 2, you know? And so obviously we rebooted in MK9. But even with doing that, we killed off half the roster in that first game in the reboot. Liu Kang was finally back after dying in Deadly Alliance, and was dead again before the game was over. Liu Kang was no longer the main character, and hadn't been for quite some time. The main character of MK9 is Raiden. I don't have a problem with that. I like Raiden, I really do. But keep that in mind. Let's talk about Raiden a little bit. In MKX, we're introduced to many new characters, because they kind of had to do that, considering that Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Jax, Katana, Sindel, Shang Tsung, all these characters were dead. Like half the roster, like I said. But there's something interesting that happens in MKX, in that Raiden is corrupted, and so we get evil or dark Raiden again, for the first time since Deception / Armageddon, right? Raiden had turned bad before in the original timeline, but it doesn't really amount to much, because Mortal Kombat Deception isn't about him, it's about Shujinko and Dragon King Onaga. And that's cool. I have no problem with that. But MK Armageddon also really isn't about Raiden. It's about Taven and Dagon and Blaze and even Onaga and Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung, right? So we have evil Raiden who's doing questionable things, but it doesn't matter because he immediately gets wiped from existence at the beginning of MK9. So we finally get another shot at this evil, darker, more aggressive, edgy, emo Raiden at the end of MK10, but then he's immediately gone, like an hour into MK11, because a god cannot coexist amongst himself at two different points in time. So when the Raiden from MK9 pops up in the present, the evil Raiden from MKX disappears. It's like, Ed, why are you so scared of doing anything that might be interesting? We have yet to actually get to experience evil Dark Raiden for any length of time that would amount to anything. And he's already gone. But beyond that, for all of the flaws that MK11 has, it's nice because it gives us a new bad guy. Because since MK 1992, it's been Quan Chi, Shang Tsung, Shao Kahn, and like Shinnok a couple times, but he's not really super important. He's in like Mythologies, MK4, and MKX. But it's really, you know, those main three, Shao Kahn, Quan Chi, Shao Kahn. 11 gives us something new. You know, because we just dealt with Shinnok in a way that it doesn't seem like he's ever going to come back, but he's got a mother. She's a titan, her name is Kronika. Completely new villain. But she's also interesting because she's not necessarily evil. She has like a cosmic responsibility and curiosity when it comes to balancing the timeline. But there's rogue elements like Raiden and Liu Kang that keep screwing things up. So she's been resetting the universe over and over and over and over and over again. So you kind of wonder, the reboot that happens in MK11, is that because of Raiden? Or did Kronika make that happen? You know what I mean? And for as uninteresting as of a character Kronika ends up actually being, it's still nice that we're doing something a little bit different. But then the MK11 Aftermath DLC came out. And it's like, oh yeah, Shang Tsung is alive in this other timeline. And here he is. Shao Kahn is also back at the same time. It's like, yeah, Shao Kahn pops up in MK11's main story, but he's not really that important because he's defeated. But then it's like, oh yeah, Sindel was actually bad the whole time. She loved Shao Kahn. That's a huge, disservice to her character. For people that have been longtime fans of Mortal Kombat like myself, we know that Sindel was never bad. But whatever, we get to just decide what we want, I guess. But then, the main villain of that DLC ends up being Shang Tsung, and you get a choice, which is actually kind of interesting. Do you want to rebuild the timeline as Liu Kang or as Shang Tsung? But we all assume that the Liu Kang ending is the one that's canon. But as we find out for Mortal Kombat 1, that they're kind of both canon. That decision that you make splits the timeline. And the main game takes place in the timeline that Liu Kang created when he became Time Lord, basically. And the timeline where Shang Tsung takes Kronika's crown and rebuilds the timeline exists concurrently. Now, I'm not necessarily against this idea as a whole, but it's like we just did a reset and we're already jumping feet first into the multiverse. We just started, and now we have to contend with the fact that every character in at least in timeline 2 from MK11, from MK9, every character that's in that version of the timeline becomes Timekeeper at some point. Or in some timeline. So, like, there's a Timekeeper Kano, Timekeeper Cabal, Timekeeper Liu Kang, obviously, Kung Lao, Raiden, Katana, Jade, Melina, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Noob Saibot, Smoke, any character who existed. There's a version where they're the one that defeated Kronika and took the crown. And I have to assume that they also had to fight Shang Tsung. And so there's also another timeline where in that timeline, Shang Tsung wins. So there's potentially infinite evil Shang Tsungs out there who could still pop up and cause problems because, spoilers for MK1's story, the Shang Tsung that Liu Kang created is like powerless. He's a charlatan. And he did that so that Shang Tsung wouldn't rise to power and become a threat like he did in the original timelines. But he is confronted by a figure who looks like Kronika and calls herself Damashi. And like, Damashi is giving Shang Tsung these resources and these tools to become more powerful, stuff like that, but you find out that Damashi is not Kronika. It's the Shang Tsung from MK11. And that's how you find out that both timelines exist at the same time. Even though, and this is a minor thing, but the characters get like redesigned really drastically between each game. It would have been nice if MK11's Shang Tsung, played by oh gosh, I can't remember how to say his name, but the actor that passed away recently that played him in the live-action movie from back in the day and in MK11, if he was still Shang Tsung so that we could visually determine which timeline Shang Tsung we're looking at. Like, Katana looks super different than she did in MK11, but that's still her, apparently, you know? Like, it's just weird. But, yeah, that's how you find out that, that those timelines exist at the same time. Shang Tsung builds an army, Liu Kang builds an army from people all around the multiverse who became Titans and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, all that's cool or whatever, but I don't think that this is the right idea for the very first game of this brand new timeline. And the reason that I say that is because of the DLC, Chaos Reigns. Already, you know, we don't know how long it's been since the main events of the game, but I do want to take a brief moment to talk about something else. Ed Boon, the creative director at NetherRealm, the guy who runs Mortal Kombat, his favorite character, as you might be able to tell, is Scorpion. And I say you might be able to tell this because he's on the box art of MK9, 10, and 11, despite not being the main character of any of those games. But if you play MK1, you may forget that, because Scorpion no longer exists. And this is something that I talked about in my previous video, but Scorpion isn't here, right? So Sub-Zero was originally a man named Bi-Han. He killed Scorpion in the original timeline at the behest of Quan Chi. And Quan Chi killed the rest of Scorpion's family and his clan while disguised as Sub-Zero. And then he gave Sub-Zero extra power to come back as a Revenant to take revenge. That's their beef. Scorpion does successfully exact his revenge and he does kill Sub-Zero. But he has a younger brother named Kuai Liang, who then becomes Sub-Zero. And the two of them, being Kuai Liang and Scorpion, kinda learn to coexist, even though their relationship is in flux from one game to the next. They don't hate each other. They're not mortal enemies the way that the Scorpion was with Bi-Han. Now, in this new timeline, Bi-Han is Sub-Zero. Kuai Liang is Scorpion. What are you talking about? What? Why would it even... What? Because let's talk about Smoke too. Smoke was adopted into Kuai Liang and Bi-Han's family by their father, the original Sub-Zero. His name is Tomas Verbata. That's not super important. I guess he's French, but his powers are obviously smoke. Bi-Han and Kuai Liang shared powers of ice because they inherited them from their father. But in this new timeline, one of them has ice powers and the other one has fire powers. So why couldn't Smoke just be part of the family if their powers don't seem to be hereditary at all? If they're just random, like, I don't get why Kuai Liang would have fire powers. But beyond that, Hanzo Hasashi, that's Scorpion's original name. Hanzo Hasashi had a wife named Harumi and a son named Satoshi. In this new timeline, Harumi is married to Kuai Liang. are you kidding me? And Hanzo Hasashi's like, some kid. Like, why would you do this to your own favorite character? Because something that's important to keep in mind, as I've mentioned before, is that this is the timeline that Liu Kang created. So everything that's different is Liu Kang's choice. Now, he doesn't control every single thing that happens because there is outside meddling, like from Shang Tsung. But, you know, Scorpion being Kuai Liang is a choice that Liu Kang made, and you have to wonder, why? Why? Why not be able to make Johnny Cage? Why not be able to make Johnny Cage a more successful actor? Why are Jax and Sonya just completely absent? You know, why are characters like Havoc and Ashura and what's her name, Li Mei, and like Reiko, like characters from the 3D era that never mattered, characters that Liu Kang never really interacted with because he was dead during the 3D era. Why are they getting the spotlight now? And I know that behind the scenes it's because Ed Boon is really upset still that nobody really played those games, and he's forcing the characters back in our faces. And I know what you're thinking. How can you say nobody played Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon? I love that game. Well, they are among the worst selling titles in the mainline franchise, not counting spin-offs like Special Forces and Shaolin Monks. But, you know, of the games from 1 to 12, those are the worst performing. That's just kind of how it is. And Ed's obviously still salty about that. But in the Chaos Reigns DLC, you find out that in one of the other timelines, Havoc is like the lord of the world. And so he shows up and he wants Geras because Geras is like the only being that has existed since the beginning of time and is loyal to the crown and like has all this knowledge about the original timelines and all that stuff. Whatever, I don't care. Kamidogu come back, none of that matters. What does matter is the fact that we are one game into this new timeline and Sub-Zero is already Noob Saibot because the other Sub-Zero is Scorpion. So now when we get to Mortal Kombat 2 or 13 or whatever they call it, there is no Sub-Zero. What are they planning to do about that? And it's frustrating because, like I said, we've been stuck in this loop of dealing with Quan Chi, Shang Tsung, Shao Kahn over and over and over again. And all three of those characters are in Mortal Kombat 1, and Shang Tsung is the main villain of Mortal Kombat 1 again. Like, we haven't been dealing with him this whole time. We finally had a break in the last game, and then we're right back to where we started, dealing with Shang Tsung as the main boss twice in a row. And yes, Havoc is different. Havoc is not one of the existing villains that I mentioned. But does anybody care? It's not even about Havoc, it's about what Havoc represents. It's about what Shang Tsung represents. Because Quan Chi could show up and be like, oh, I defeated Kronika. Shao Kahn could show up and be like, I defeated Kronika. Shinnok could show up and say, I defeated my mother. Now, like, we're still stuck dealing with the same villains. Even if you were somebody like me who would like to see Dragon King Onaga pop back up and actually be relevant, especially because we were dealing with, like, his terracotta soldiers in MK1, it would be nice for him to come back and be relevant again, but it would still be like, oh, I defeated Kronika. You know, it's frustrating to no end. What about Taven and Dagon? What if they popped back up? What if Dagon popped back up and said, I defeated Kronika? What if Blaze popped up and said, I defeated Kronika? There's really nothing to say that that can't happen. So now, if we don't go a route like that in the next game, you're going to have to start explaining why. What is it that's keeping other Titans, other Time Lords from popping up in this timeline wanting beef with Liu Kang? And why would they even... Don't they have their own Geras from their timeline? Why do they need our Geras? I don't even remember what that was about. But it's just... It's all so contrived and forced. That's the thing, is like, it insists upon itself, the Peter Griffin meme. But it really... Like, things are already so out of hand. You know, the first game in this new timeline ends with a multiversal war where characters are fighting several alternate versions of themselves. And then we have the same thing happening in the DLC for said game. We don't even have a status quo, and we're already smashing it. What is the point of the Mortal Kombat tournament in this new timeline? What are the Elder Gods doing? Do they exist anymore? Are these the same Elder Gods from the original timeline? Are they completely unaffected by what happens? Is it the same set of Elder Gods presiding over all timelines all at once? Because now that Raiden isn't a god anymore, what does that mean for Fujin? You know? What about Bo Raicho? He's not from Earthrealm, he's from Outworld. What happens with him? Does he even exist? Is Madame Bo Raicho? That'd be kind of strange. Why is Tarkat a disease instead of just a race of people? Why are the Zaterans still pretty much extinct? Why is there still a Cyber Lin Kuei initiative? Like, what? In its desperation and obsession with appearing to be something new and fresh and different and original from what we've seen before, it's running into the same walls. It doesn't matter that Tarkat's a disease instead of a race, because Baraka still exists. Why? Why can't Tarkat just not be a thing? Why does Melina need to be afflicted with it? Because she wasn't the original timeline? If we're gonna do things differently, why not actually do them differently? Or if they're gonna be so similar, why is this a new timeline in the first place? Because the only thing that's functionally different is that Liu Kang is not the Mortal Kombat champion. That's cool, but he could be. Because you could fight Shang Tsung at the end as Liu Kang if you wanted to. I did as Kung Lao because that's my favorite character. And then it was just over. It's also like Shang Tsung is the easiest final boss in a Mortal Kombat game that I've played my whole life. It was actually shocking. It was astonishing. But I wanted to play as Kung Lao because I wanted to have my Razor hat. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if people played as Kenshi because they wanted to have Sento. You know, like, you play as the characters at a point in time where they don't even have the thing that they're known for having. So when you finally get a chance to, of course you're going to take it. But, like, where is Sonya? Are we going to have the combat kids in this timeline? Because they do show up at that battle of the pyramid. You know? And Takeda Takahashi is one of the DLC characters. Are the DLC characters canon? They were in MK11, for the most part. So, yeah, excluding guest characters, the DLC characters in MK11 were canon. So I assume that it works that same way here in MK1, because Quan Chi is in the main story of the game. Ermac is in the main story of the game. Again, why is Sindel dead? Why does Sindel keep dying? I like Sindel. She's died like 5 times. I don't get it. Why does Shao Kahn even exist? Why does Reiko exist? I just don't understand. And so, like I'm trying to say, things are already so out of control and so hard to wrap your head around that there is no solution when it comes time for MK2 or 13 or whatever they call it. The answer is to reboot it again. But I mean, there's so many other problems with MK1 that I can't really comment on because I never spent any additional money on. I never spent any money on it in the first place. I never went online. I don't know anything about Invasions mode. The lack of a crypt, I think, is stupid, but I never engaged with any of the other content. I played the story mode and then I uninstalled. I dipped immediately. I had no interest whatsoever, you know. And I know that MK1 has its fans, but does it have enough fans? Because support was killed, you know, 2 years post-launch. That's really, like, really not good for a Mortal Kombat game. You know, especially because these games come out every 4 years. You would want, like, MK11 pretty much still got support. Like, yeah, it went through all of its DLC characters, I think, within the first 2 or so years. But it still got support up until around the time that MK1 was announced, I think. You know, like, I'm not here to comment on cameos or anything like that. It's really just from a story perspective. Mortal Kombat is already off the rails again in such a way that I don't think it can be recovered organically. I don't think, let's just keep making more games until it irons itself out. I just don't think that it can. But I would like to pass a question to you guys. What do you think is, you know, what do you think of the current state of Mortal Kombat? Do you think it can be saved? Do you think it's worth saving? Do you think it needs a new reboot? Or do you think it's time for Mortal Kombat to end and NetherRealm to maybe move on to something else? Maybe they focus on Injustice 3. I could do a video about Injustice 3 and what I think that game should be. Let me know what you think in the comments while you're down there. Leave a like, subscribe, and just, you know, tell me how your day was. Tell me what you're looking forward to in 2026. Me, I'm looking forward to how bad that Mortal Kombat 2 movie is going to be. What do you think about that as well, I guess? I don't know. I never know how to end these videos, so I'm just going to leave.